Good morning. It's the NBA Strategy Show for Tuesday, December 20th. I'm joined alongside Adam to talk about today's 5-game NBA DFS slate. Adam, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. Last night was decent for me, so looking forward to getting back to it.
I wish I could say the same. That's why I'm back here today to have better results for this Tuesday. But yeah, last night's slate was a ton of news, obviously breaking throughout the day. The Minnesota situation came out pretty early. And then we had the situation with LA that really kind of screwed my lineups over. Now that I think about it, because I was pretty heavily overexposed to Russell Westbrook. Then he was ruled out. And the late swap flexibility, it just like forced me to leave a little too much salary that I would have liked to spend probably earlier in the night if I had that Westbrook news earlier. So kind of like put my lineups in a position not as optimal as I would have liked there. So, but here we are to talk about this 5-game slate. It's a nice small Tuesday slate. These Tuesdays have been shorter slates for us, but shorter slates kind of present a different strategy, a little bit more concentrated ownership at times on the better plays, or sometimes we will see some bad chalk. But here we are. Let's go ahead and get started. But first, shout out to our presenting sponsor, PrizePicks. They've changed the way player props in daily fantasy. We'll touch on some exciting price picks later in the game, and also check out their offer that we have in the link in the description. I'm sure producer Jordan will drop it in the chat later on in the show. First game, Utah going to Detroit. Utah's on a back end of the back-to-back. They played Cleveland last night. They got absolutely waxed. When it's Utah, it's going to be Lauri Markkanen, and we're going to be talking about him as he's their lead dog. And Jordan Clarkson, Kelly Olynyk. Kelly Olynyk did not play last night. We saw Walker Kessler start there. Talk to me about the Utah situation. A lot of these guys will get some ownership just because of a 5-game slate, but the way things look right now, Mike Conley is leading the way in terms of ownership, kind of on both sides. He comes in at 5,300, 5,500, and when Mike Conley is kind of popular, I kind of look elsewhere. He comes in at $16 on Yahoo. I just don't think Mike Conley has that same ceiling as we were once used to.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll also need to keep an eye on his status to make sure he's going to play on the second half of the back-to-back. But if he does go, I think he looks reasonable with it being a 5-game slate. He is only 5,300, played about 28 and a half minutes yesterday, but again, that was a game that blew out. So maybe he would have played a bit more. He had played about 15, 16 minutes in the first half. So looked like he was going to play 30 to 32 minutes if the game had been competitive. And he's not a high usage guy. You know, he doesn't score a ton anymore, but still does enough in the way of assists that he's, just shy of a fantasy point per minute guy this year. So at 5,300 in a good matchup, I do think he's still underpriced as long as he's good to go. We also will need to wait on the Kelly Olynyk news. Surprising starting lineup last night. They went with Vanderbilt alongside Walker Kessler. It does make some sense going up against the Jared Allen and Evan Mobley front court, but it surprised me because they had played a total of 1 minute next to each other all season long. So it looked like it was something that they had been avoiding. But if they're going to go with that front court, if Olynyk's out, and they're going to go with that front court against Cleveland, I wouldn't be surprising if you get it again today against the Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren Detroit front court. So that'll be something to keep an eye on, Olynyk's status, because if he's out, you have a $5,600 Vanderbilt and a 5K Kessler that would both look like decent options. If Olynyk is in, if he's able to avoid foul trouble, you're likely getting 30 to 32 minutes. He is only 5% owned, which would actually look pretty interesting in tournaments. And then similarly, Lauri Markkanen at 8K should play 34 plus minutes if this game's competitive. It's a good matchup. He's about a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy. So at 10% ownership, he would look pretty interesting to me as well.
Yeah, and I think on a 5-game slate, you can make your reasons for some other tournament options, but we'll see what the new situation looks like. It is a back end of a back-to-back for this Utah team. We'll see who ends up starting for this team, who ends up getting ruled out. So feel free to take some chances on this Utah team. It's a great Detroit spot. And I don't know, is Colin Sexton potentially available to play today, or is he questionable?
I think he's questionable.
Okay, so that will also change some things up for this Utah team if he is ready to go. Right now, we do have him projected for some minutes at 25 minutes or so. So we'll take a look on what that ends up looking like and who ends up being the starters against this Detroit team. Any final thoughts on Utah, except just paying attention to news as this is the first game of the night and there will be a lot of moving parts leading up to lock here?
Yeah, just paying attention to the news because obviously we're waiting on a lot there, and with them being on a back-to-back, we don't have an actual injury report yet.
Yeah, and there is some concentrated ownership here, so we'll see what ends up happening. Onto the Detroit side we go. For what it's worth, Utah is favored by 2.5 points with a total of 230 here. So for Detroit, it's been the Bojan Bogdanovic show, and he has been awesome of late. He has been lighting it up offensively, just offensive scoring pretty much is what he's going to provide you. He comes in at 6,400 where you get the 3-point bonus on DraftKings, 61 on FanDuel, $22 on Yahoo. Bogdanovic is someone who I've been lucky enough to roster in aggressive fashion just because I think the usage was going to tick up with no Cade Cunningham. Yes, I know Jaden Ivey returned, but he's someone on their team you can make an argument he's probably their best offensive player right now, and he's showing kind of the reason why he got that early season contract extension, and he's been good. I like going to Bogdanovic today on this 5-game slate. I do think right now his minutes at 28.9, I could see them easily north of 30, where he's potentially going to play 30 plus minutes. I like taking some chances on him. Another guy who I've been aggressively getting above the field on and hasn't really panned out for me has been Jaden Ivey. Ivy's 5K and 5,900. We've touched on Ivy, how he's an efficient game away from having a really good fantasy outcome. Like the ownership's going to be there tonight on Jaden Ivey on DraftKings for sure. And I don't mind even going to him on FanDuel just because of the 5-game slate here. I think he should be taking double-digit shot attempts. He's a talented offensive rookie where he's fast as fuck, and I think he can definitely score in bunches if he scores efficiently here. Talk about Bogdanovich and Ivy for this Detroit team.
Yeah, so the biggest issue with Detroit in general is that they're running a 10-man rotation where everybody basically has a direct backup, and so you're just not getting a lot of playing time for anybody. Like looking at their last game where they lost to the Nets 124-121, so a competitive game down to the end. Bojan Bogdanovic led the team with 30.8 minutes. Killian Hayes was behind him at 30.6. So that's the issue with Detroit. But that being said, you are still getting some decent price tags. You do have Cade Cunningham out, so you've seen increased production. You mentioned Bojan Bogdanovic. He's averaged 1.07 DraftKings points per minute in the games he's played without Cunningham and with Ivy this year. So even in 30 minutes, there is some upside for him. He's pulling about 12% ownership on DraftKings. Jaden Ivey's down to 5K. We've seen him in this in the 5K range for the last couple of games. There is a lot of upside for him at that price tag. The issue is just that you're getting like 26 to 28 minutes a game. Even last game they closed with Alec Burks over him, but in 26 to 28 minutes, he's still going to look okay at that price tag. 0.9 DraftKings points per minute without Cunningham this year. 26.5% usage rate, though. So he's an inefficient scorer, but you're still going to have games where the shot falls at a higher rate than normal and that he puts up these big games. My concern is that with this being a 5-game slate and us not having a lot of value right now, Ivy's pulling 26% ownership. So you're kind of in a situation where, yeah, he projects pretty well, but if he does have that big game, you're not getting that much of an advantage because 25% of the field has him. He's the type of player in general where I prefer getting him when he's going to be low owned, but I still think he projects pretty well here. If you just give him 26 to 28 minutes in this spot against Utah, it's a good spot for Detroit. So both of those guys make sense. Jalen Duren's been starting. He's 4,800. He played 28 and a half minutes last game. You've been seeing him play around 28 minutes typically in games, even where Bagley wasn't injured like he was a couple of games ago. So I think Duren still looks pretty good. Isaiah Stewart's cheap. There's a lot of guys you can get to on this team, even though they aren't playing a ton of minutes because the prices have come down.
Yeah, Jalen Duren has been someone at $4,800 right now. I do think he's slightly underpriced. And if he's going to play 28 minutes, I definitely can think he can produce at a point per minute type of situation. Double bonus over there on DraftKings could certainly pan out for him. Duren's been pretty solid. He kind of had come in low on the last couple of slates, and I went to him in aggressive fashion. And Duren's someone I think I'll be going to tonight for sure on DraftKings. I think he's priced priced favorably for us. But not so much on FanDuel. It comes in at $5,800, where you have only one center, and yes, Nikola Jokic is on the slate. The opportunity cost seems a little bit too high. Doesn't seem like a solid play over there. While other guys on this team, Killian Hayes has been playing much better of late compared to what he has in past seasons, 6,100 and 6,200. And it's been probably a tough adjustment to him. He always comes in a little bit under owned just because he doesn't project the greatest at times, but he's slowly showing that he has an upside of paying off salaries above 6K. And also, before we wrap up this Detroit team, you did mention everyone kind of has a direct backup here. Is this a situation on a 5-game slate that you're going to be willing to make some rules here to not like potentially get the pairings of their direct backups? I'm really curious because, yeah, I mean, Dwayne Casey has been running like a 10-man rotation. Maybe we can get lucky in the sense and just get the right rotational run if we make those rules. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so Jalen Duren and Marvin Bagley are direct backups. So I think that they're both playable. Bagley coming in at 4,100. If Duren gets in foul trouble, you're going to get more minutes for Bagley. But I wouldn't want them in the same lineup, especially because they are both centers on DraftKings. But either way, like you're just going to get them equaling 48 minutes. So every minute that Bagley plays is a minute that Duren isn't playing and vice versa. So I would set that rule. I think you can set a rule for Sadiq Bey and Isaiah Stewart as well. We've seen some games recently where Bey does play big minutes, but he's typically not playing a lot of minutes with Stewart out there. So I think the most likely path to success for Bey is Stewart to get in foul trouble. But I'm not as confident in that rule because you can potentially get Bey taking some minutes from like Kevin Knox and playing a little bit more. But for sure, Duren and Bagley just are not playing alongside each other.
Yeah, and that's something to keep an eye on. And I don't expect any starting lineup changes for this Detroit team for what it seems like this team is fully healthy. So with a fully healthy team, a lot of times they're not as intriguing, but on a 5-game slate, there are some solid tournament options that we should definitely be considering. All right, so on to the next
And
game.
also, I think you could set a rule. So I wouldn't want to I wouldn't necessarily want to do max one of Jaden Ivey and Alec Burks, but I think max two of Killian Hayes, Ivy, and Burks makes sense. You do see Burks at times take a couple of minutes from Hayes. Typically, he's taking them from Ivy, but it's not crazy to think that, if Hayes plays poorly and Ivy plays well, you could get a closing lineup where Ivy and Burks are together.
Yeah, and I think that's a solid potential role there for sure. Thanks for everyone who's joining us this morning. If you guys can hit that like button and subscribe button for us, that'd be awesome. And if you guys are listening on the podcast, feel free to drop that 5-star review for us. And the subscribe button will help as we're nearing 85,000 subscribers. That will be fantastic if we can reach that goal before the end of the new year. On to Chicago and Miami we go. Chicago is 5-point underdogs traveling to Miami here. And the Chicago team has been pretty awful of late. They've been absolutely getting waxed. They got destroyed by Minnesota, I want to say, the other night. I think Minnesota dropped 150 piece on them. When it's Chicago, it's always going to be DeMar and Zach LaVine for me. On a 5-game slate where center is kind of bleak, Vucevic kind of organically falls into play here. DeRozan comes in at 8,200 and 84 on FanDuel, DraftKings and FanDuel respectively. $38 on Yahoo seems all right. LaVine is always someone who rostering maybe a little too much at times. 7,300 and 7,200. $27 on Yahoo. The preference for me is kind of this season been LaVine, DeRozan, Vooch, kind of like price sensitive here, but maybe today it might be DeRozan, LaVine, and Vooch just because the way the positionality works out. This team is getting ownership, a lot of concentrated ownership to this team as well. Caruso and Patrick Williams are getting kind of north of 20% of ownership right now on DraftKings, which is going to be a decision point to make there, as those guys are going to get minutes, but they're not going to put up massive ceiling performances for you. They just help you fill in some other roster spots because of their pricing just makes it fit. As of right now, it doesn't seem to be much sub 4K value. That's why Cruz is probably sticking out over here. So talk to me about the Bulls team going over to Miami.
Yeah, so I mean, you get the three main pieces with Vooch, LaVine, DeRozan. It kind of goes without saying that they're all good enough options. Not a very appealing matchup against Miami, but it is only a 5-game slate. You should get around 34 minutes from Vooch, 35 from LaVine, 36 from DeRozan, somewhere in that range. So they're all going to look pretty good. They're all pulling around 20% ownership on DraftKings. The two pieces that are interesting in that they're getting ownership simply because there's not a lot of value is Alex Caruso at 3,900 and Patrick Williams at 4,200. Neither one's a good point per minute guy, but you are likely to get around 28 minutes from Caruso. You're likely to get around 30 minutes or so from Patrick Williams. So right now, with there not being much value on this slate, they both just end up looking like reasonable value options. I don't mind getting away from them in tournaments just because the chances of either of those guys killing you are pretty low, and you can kind of just take chances on some other, lower probability players, but guys that are getting a lot less ownership. But all five of the projected starters are getting a lot of ownership here. Nobody else from Chicago really is. I don't mind going to $3,300 Drummond on this slate. We didn't see him play at all last game, but I'm not sure that continues here. That was against Minnesota. They were going with Luka Garza and Nathan Knight as backups. Then you had Reed get hurt, so it was Knight and Garza. But typically, we've seen Chicago recently go to Derek Jones as the backup center against smaller teams, go with Drummond against bigger teams. You have Adebayo and Dedmon here, I assume. I mean, it's Miami, so who knows who's actually going to play. But maybe you get Drummond. I don't know. I think it's really risky, but at 3,300, if he plays the backup minutes, he would end up looking good. It's just that I can't be confident he's playing those minutes because you had Derek Jones get them last game.
Yeah, I think on a short slate, it's even more. I'm willing to take a chance on a guy like Andre Drummond. There is a pathway for him to play 15, 16 minutes and put up 20 fantasy points. And that really can differentiate your lineup from the rest of the field. And he's going to probably be low owned. I think people will kind of shy away from him not seeing those minutes last time out. And I'm okay with him burning me type of situation. I'm willing to take that risk because of that price point here tonight. And I think you've mentioned Drummond periodically throughout the season. I definitely think it's worth taking a chance on him tonight.
Yeah, I mean, just keep in mind, it's extremely risky. Like, the guy played 0 minutes last game. If we had gotten like his normal rotation last game, I'd actually like him here. As is, I think it's extremely risky, but it could pay off nicely if you do get 14 minutes off the bench.
Yeah, and I think those are the type of situations and risks that sometimes you should be willing to take on a shorter slate
Yeah,
personally. But
I'd prefer it if Miami had like Dedmon's a center, but he's not gonna just live in the paint. I'd prefer it if you had, a Oneko Okongwu or something like as the backup, but could go either way here, I think.
yeah, I definitely could there. Any final thoughts on this Bulls team? I think we covered a lot of them on their big
Did you say
three.
something?
And
Are you there?
yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I said, any final thoughts on the Bulls team
No.
before we move? Okay. Onto the Miami side we go. And it's Miami team. It's the Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero show. Collar is kind of playing second fiddle to those guys when all those guys are healthy. And this team is expected to be fully healthy today. And when this Miami team is fully healthy, it's kind of a tough situation to go to um, with what the minutes can look like and what the usage is going to look like. I believe Lowry is still questionable, so that might open up some minutes in the backcourt there and maybe some extra usage and ball handling duty for Tyler Hero. But man, Butler and Hero are priced up $9,200, $8,800 for both of them. And Butler comes in 10K over there in FanDuel, 8,200 for Hero. Bam's not cheap on FanDuel, but I think you can definitely take some chances on Bam over there on DraftKings at $8,400. They're priced very favorably on Yahoo if you want to play this Miami Heat team. They're all, I think, great options over there. But with this situation against Chicago, I'm going to have some interest because of their low ownership, and they certainly have a ceiling. It's just that we're playing these guys at their most expensive price tag outside of Bam, it feels like. Talk to me about the Lowry questionable situation, what the backcourt minutes could look like, and if you have a preference on one of the Miami Heat studs.
Yeah, so if Lowry is out, it also depends on Caleb Martin's status, what I think the starting lineup looks like. But you would get more ball handling for Tyler Hero. Jimmy Butler and Bam would look a bit better as well. If Lowry is in at 6,600, I think he's a reasonable option. He should play a lot of minutes. I like Tyler Hero at low ownership, one way or the other. We have him projected for 4% ownership right now. He's been playing huge minutes recently, and I don't expect that to change today. He's averaged 1.06 DraftKings points per minute in the games he's played with Butler and Adebayo active this year. And again, only pulling 4% ownership. You could easily get 36 to 38 minutes from Tyler Hero here, coming off of another game last time out where he played 38 minutes. So I think he's going to look good one way or the other. But if you take out Lowry, he looks even better. Same can be said for Adebayo and Butler. Just kind of surprised they're not getting a little bit more ownership given the favorable matchup against Chicago. Adebayo coming in at just $8,400, Butler at $9,200. We saw Butler play about 34 and a half minutes last game. Adebayo played 36. I expect similar playing time from them here. They just seem like guys that should be getting a little bit more ownership on this slate, given where we've seen, ownership going on other teams.
Yeah, and the situation here is going to be very news dependent as we get the new situation with Lowry. But I think they're solid tournament options. Even if Lowry were to play, I don't think I'll have much interest in going to him just because I don't think the ceiling of him reaching the ceiling is as likely with all of these guys healthy. So I'm going to be trying to target the studs a little bit. As gross as it sounds, I'm going to have to play a little bit of Jimmy Butler at 10K. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I think their salary might be better spent elsewhere, but it's another team that has a kind of a big new situation with Lowry eating up a decent amount of minutes that will open up. Any interest in the second tier guys? Caleb Martin is priced up now at 5,700. Max Strus is 5K. Oladipo's been getting more run of late, 4,900 and 4,800. Someone asked about Duncan Robinson in the chat, and I don't think I can go there today. Talk to me about the second tier and the bench guys of the Miami Heat team.
Yeah, I mean, if Lowry and Martin are out, maybe you get enough minutes for Robinson. He did play 26 last game. Similarly, Oladipo played 34. So the Oladipo minutes are really interesting to see because just the fact that he physically can play those minutes. If Lowry and Martin are in, though, I wouldn't be able to project Oladipo to play that much. I just don't think that's going to be his normal role. He is also up to 4,900. So if those guys are out, I think it's a reasonable spot to take a chance. If they're in, I don't think you're getting enough minutes from Oladipo. I think it's more likely that he settles into the mid-20s. And similarly with Max Strus at 5K, if Caleb Martin's in, if Kyle Lowry's in, I don't really think I can get to much Strus. But if those guys are out, you're probably getting Strus in the starting lineup, and there's a good chance you're getting low to mid-30s from him. So he would be an interesting option at 5K as well if those guys miss.
Yeah, and I think that's a great breakdown right there. Before we move on, if everyone can hit that like button for us, that'd be great. And also, we have a holiday bet MGM special. Take advantage of their new special that they have. You can find that link in the description. You can get a first bet insurance up to $1,000 for new users who sign up for the BetMGM account. So take advantage, find all the details there. And I'm sure producer Jordan will drop the link in the chat. So take advantage of that BetMGM offer that we have going. On to the next game we go. Golden State is 5.5 point underdogs against the Knicks. That just feels weird to say. And the reason why they're dogs, obviously, Steph Curry is going to be ruled out for a month. He has a tear in his labrum. So with him being out, Jordan Poole is showed out and he dropped a nice 43 piece the other night. He comes in priced up at $8,100, $8,300 on DK and FanDuel, $31 on Yahoo. Certainly a solid price point to go there. He's going to get a ton of ownership. I like going to Poole, but I also like going to Clay, even at $6,600 and $7,300. I do think these two guys combined are going to shoot the ball maybe 40, 45 times a game without Curry, in my opinion. And Andrew Wiggins is also out. So there are going to be a lot of minutes available to be spread around here. Additionally, Dante DiVincenzo has been playing a lot of minutes. He comes in at $6,200. That's expensive for DiVincenzo.
He's doubtful.
He is doubtful. Oh, okay. With him being doubtful, that will definitely potentially open up minutes for Jonathan Kuminga. Is going to definitely take some minutes. We might see the likes of Moses Moody and Ty Jerome play minutes as well. That's an interesting situation with DiVincenzo out because he was playing a lot of minutes. I definitely have interest in this Golden State team because they're missing a bunch of guys. Break down this Golden State team.
Yeah, they're going to look really good, starting with Jordan Poole. Should pull a lot of ownership, like you said, but very well deserved. The price tag just hasn't really adjusted enough. He's only 8,100. He's played 3 games now where Curry's been out and Clay's been in. He has a 35.5% usage rate to go along with a 29% assist percentage in those games. Overall this year, without Curry on the floor, since the start of last year without Curry on the floor, 31% usage rate. This year, it's even higher. He's just going to look really good here, and he's playing a lot of minutes as well. 34.6% usage rate this year without Curry. Thompson has a 22.5% usage rate without Curry, which is surprisingly low, but it is likely to come up. Probably not as much as people maybe expected when Curry first got hurt, because you have to keep in mind that Curry's being replaced with another extremely high usage guy in Jordan Poole. So I think you probably see Clay's usage rate kind of stay in the same range, maybe elevate a little bit from where it was when Curry played. But Clay's playing so many minutes that there is still some merit to getting him at 6,600. You're just likely to get 36 minutes from him. DiVincenzo being out, it'll be interesting to see who replaces him in the starting lineup. With it being Steve Kerr, it could be literally anybody. My guess, I think, would be Moody, but really could be anybody. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But most of the guys coming off the bench for Golden State aren't good point per minute guys. So depends who it is that replaces him. But like if you get Moody replacing DiVincenzo, I still don't think he's going to be that interesting. But at 3,300, probably would project around 18, 19 DraftKings points, which, given the lack of value on the slate, maybe opens some stuff up for you. But I think Poole and Thompson are clearly the priorities here. Then if you get to some Draymond Green, I think that's fine. He's projected for 17% ownership as well. Outside of that, I don't really see much of anything outside of, again, maybe taking some shots on a $3,300 Moody if he starts for DiVincenzo.
Yeah, feel free to. I think you could. I do think it's a high risk, high reward, rotating and taking some chances on those like really thin pieces, being your Lamb, Moody, even Ty Jerome. I do think one of them could certainly find a way to being good. Tough to see two getting there. And Steve Kerr has shown the tendency this season than others to kind of ride the hot hand with some of these players when these guys have been out. So we'll see how that pans out. And it's going to be a fun ownership situation with this team. I hope people don't go to Klay Thompson as much. I really like that $6,600 price tag where you get that 3-point bonus. I do think he can definitely light it up for sure. Keep an eye on the starting lineup here. It'll be interesting what Steve Kerr ends up doing with no potential. Like you said, DiVincenzo has been ruled doubtful. So there'll be some minutes to be eaten up for sure. On to the next game we go. Hit that like button for us. And onto the Knicks side, it's Julius Randle and it's RJ Barrett and Jalen Brunson. That's their mid three, and they're all getting a lot of ownership in terms of a 5 game slate. All right now projected north of 20% across the board. So, and it's not those three. And Mitchell Robinson's also getting ownership as well. This team is just going to be a popular team to attack, it seems like, based on how they're priced. But Randall's priced up 9,100 and 9K. It's expensive for Randall. We haven't seen this price tag since he was an all-star two seasons ago, but he's been playing well. So he's earned that price tag. Brunson comes in at $7,200 and 7,800. Like that DK price tag for him. FanDuel, that seems appropriate. I'm not too excited about it. While Barrett comes in at $69 and $6,300. He's just priced appropriately. This team's just priced appropriately, and seems like the field is just like fitting them in the way things seem like now with the projected ownership. As ridiculous as it sounds, my favorite option might be the Mitchell Robinson at 5,200 on DK. How do you feel about this Knicks team?
I like the Knicks here. So it's a fast-paced Golden State team, and you still have Obi Toppin out, which just opens up some additional minutes. Julius Randle now has played 5 games without Toppin this year. He's averaged 36.8 minutes per game. And keep in mind, there's a game that he got ejected midway through the third quarter. You're likely to get 38 minutes or so from him. The two things that have been an issue for Randle this year are that Jalen Brunson cuts into his assist numbers, and Obi Toppin has been his direct backup with neither of them playing minutes at the 5. So you're basically just getting 33, 34 minutes from Julius Randle when Toppin is in. But with Toppin being out, you have Randle back to playing these 38, 39, 40-minute games like he did in the past. He still averaged 1.22 DraftKings points per minute this year. So I think he looks good. You could certainly make the case that the ownership gap between him and Jimmy Butler is a little bit too wide, where they're basically the same price on DraftKings. But I do prefer Randle, ownership aside. He should just play a lot of minutes here. Similarly with RJ Barrett, in most of these games without Toppin, you're getting a ton of run from him as well. He's coming off of a game where he played 42.2 minutes against Indiana, and that hasn't been a very weird rotation for him. I think you see upper 30s, if not 40 minutes from him again. So 6,900 is going to look pretty good there. Jalen Brunson coming off another 35-minute game. He looks good at 7,200. So I get why all three of these guys are getting ownership. Mitchell Robinson's interesting just because when he does avoid foul trouble, you are typically getting around 30 minutes from him. He's about a fantasy point per minute guy, a little bit shy of it this year, but it's, a fast-paced spot, good spot for Robinson. So I do like getting to him. Isaiah Hartenstein's coming in at 3,400. He is someone where I wouldn't play him with Robinson, but that is a pretty cheap price tag. If Robinson gets in foul trouble, you could certainly see a few minutes on top of the 16 that Hartenstein's typically going to play. Quentin Grimes has been playing a ton. He's 4,800, but should play low to mid 30s. He's averaged 0.71 DraftKings points per minute this year, so he's getting a little bit of ownership as well, along with Emmanuel Quickly, who's likely to play 22 to 26 minutes off the bench. So I think the Grimes, Quickly, Hartenstein, Robinson pieces that are all getting 11 to 16% make sense as like secondary options. I think Brunson, Randle, Barrett all look really good here.
Yeah, I think I might differ with you here. I know I think it's more of an ownership thing, and I might be willing to pivot to other teams just because I think these guys are coming a tad bit overowned, but we'll see how the news evolves throughout the day. Yeah, I don't mind taking some chances on guys like Quickly or Hartenstein or Grimes just because of their price tags. And there is a pathway for them paying off that and finding a way on this 5 game slate. So we'll see how the news develops and how this team's ownership projects throughout the day. I do think it might change a little bit. But any final thoughts on this Knicks team before we move on to Washington and Phoenix?
No, it just looks like an appealing team, pretty much top to bottom.
On to Washington and Phoenix we go. Phoenix is 7-point favorites against this Washington team. Phoenix is on a back end of the back-to-back. Washington played Sunday night against the Lakers. So this team is Porzingis and Kuzma, and I believe Bradley Beal is supposedly he played last game. So Bradley Beal should be ready to go, and this team is now all price / too expensive with Beal back in the picture. Porzingis and Kuzma are a bit too expensive for their price tag with Beal being back in the picture, but it's a small enough slate that you should be willing to take some chances. Maybe I probably would take my chances with Porzingis rather than Kuzma. Monty Morris just running the point, not doing much. He comes in at $5,100 and $5,500. He's kind of your Mike Conley pivot here, similar price range, but a lot lower ownership. Obviously projects for a lot worse than Conley, but if you're looking to pivot and I don't know how close and how often Morris outscores Conley if you're to play this slate 100 times, but I do think it can definitely happen more than ten times, maybe. I'm not sure. It'll be definitely a number. Talk to me about this Washington team. With Beal being back in the picture, they look a lot less appealing. Everyone on this team is coming in sub 10% owned, except for Kuzma over there on FanDuel. It's a tough team to go to in confidence when Beal is coming back and everyone's price has gone up.
Yeah, I think it's the least appealing team we've talked about so far in terms of the way players look relative to projection. It's still a team that you can take chances on in tournaments. Kristaps Porzingis coming in at 9K, center only on DraftKings, so that's certainly problematic. But he's averaged 1.3 DraftKings points per minute, even in the games that Beal and Kuzma have both been active this year. And he's coming off of another game where he played 37 and a half minutes against the Lakers. You've seen huge minutes from Porzingis recently when he's been healthy. So I think the tournament upside is there. It's just that it's difficult to get to him at, a center only price tag or a center only positional eligibility and a 9K price tag. He's a little bit more expensive on FanDuel at 9,600, but he does have that power forward eligibility, so he's pulling a little bit more ownership. Similarly, Kyle Kuzma, certainly not somebody you're going to get to very easily. He's not that much less expensive than guys like Julius Randle and Jimmy Butler that look better, but you are still likely to get 36, 37 minutes at least from Kuzma if this game's competitive. And he has averaged over a fantasy point per minute this year, so there is some upside there. Beal is 7,900 on DraftKings, which is a really cheap price tag. He did only play 31 and a half minutes last game. I expect you see him get back to his normal 36 minutes or so tonight. He's averaged 1.09 DraftKings points per minute in the games he's played with Porzingis and Kuzma this year. You have seen his usage rate come down from previous years, 26.5% this year, does have a 25% assist percentage. So he's another one where I think that he doesn't project that well, but at 6% ownership and one of the cheapest price tags you're ever going to get on Beal, I can see using him to differentiate some lineups, but it's just not a piece that I expect to really be building around.
Yeah, I think Beal definitely deserves to be taking some chances on tournaments. I do think that's a solid price tag for Bradley Beal on both sides, honestly. No, sorry. On DraftKings specifically at 7,900. He comes in at $8,700 on FanDuel. That seems a little too expensive. But it's a team that doesn't look as appealing, and the ownership indicates it that way as well. So I think there's a lot of merit maybe taking some shots on tournaments if someone's going to have a outlier outcome performance based on their salary. It can certainly happen, but it's a Phoenix spot. Everyone, high usage player coming back into the picture with Bradley Beal. So well, I'm willing to take some chances, but they don't seem the greatest point per dollar value plays across the board. We did get a super chat from Fahuth07, 499 super chat. Thank you for that super chat. He has a question for you, Adam. How do you utilize boom bust tool on small slates when players have a very small boom rate, but still have a 15% chance above being optimal?
Yeah, so it's sort of difficult to answer because I don't utilize it in that regard. But what it's basically showing you there, like if you're looking at a lineup and trying to fill in a spot, like using that data from the boom bust tool, the optimal percentage, like the optimal percentage is different than the boom percentage. Boom percentage is showing you the chances of being 5x plus 10. Optimal showing you the percent chance of being in the optimal lineup. So it kind of depends what you're looking for. Like comparing the optimal percentage to the ownership percentage is going to give you a quick way to gauge if a player is coming in under owned or not. So that can be a good way to try and differentiate within your lineup. But boom percentage is going to give you a better idea of how likely the player is to exceed their salary. So it's kind of two different things. Like optimal percentage is just factoring in other things like their position, the salary, the way the rest of the salaries on the rest of the slate work. So it's just kind of two different things that you can look at either one kind of depending on what you're looking for in your lineup.
Yeah, and it's something that you should monitor throughout the day because it will change based on news as well. And late news really will change the outlook of something like a boom bust situation. I think Terry, shout out to Terry, who had a nice explanation as well in the chat there.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Terry. On to the Phoenix side we go. Phoenix is on a back end of the back-to-back. Devin Booker missed last night, and we saw Chris Paul drop a nice solid fantasy game, and DeAndre Ayton started and didn't. I don't think DeAndre Ayton closed. I could be wrong. I just didn't see his fantasy points go up for a long
Pretty sure it
period
was
of
like a
time there.
100 point game by the end.
Okay, all right. So that's probably the reason why. But let's take a look. I have no.
Yeah,
It's
they won
it
by
ha
26.
Okay, that
He
makes
didn't play
a
in the
lot of
fourth.
sense. Okay. There are a lot of guys who are going to be questionable. Josh Okogie did leave the game last game. Devin Booker, I believe, is still questionable, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was just like a precautionary rest situation after he dropped 58 over the weekend. We'll see if he goes out and plays. It's against a Washington team. Booker, if he plays, I'm willing to take some chances at 9,500. 10-4 on FanDuel. That's expensive for Booker. $42 on Yahoo. I think that's a solid option to take some chances on. Now, if he were to out, I think we can definitely go back to Chris Paul, even at 8,300 and 8,100. I'll definitely like going to Ayton, 7,600 and 8K, just because of the center slate. Ayton's kind of already in play, even if Booker were to go. I'm willing to take some chances there. And Mikal Bridges is a type of player who I'm willing to take some chances on when Booker is out, not so much when Booker is in type of situation here. He's priced towards the ceiling. We've never seen him priced at 7,500 over there on FanDuel. That's kind of a new career high for him. Bridges at 6,500. Getting some ownership on DraftKings, it's kind of like if he's your last man in, I won't argue with you. I'm just not looking to go there if Booker is there. Everyone else on this team, it's kind of like a roulette situation with Monty Williams. We don't know who's going to start usually when Booker is out. Okogie being questionable, there might be some additional minutes available for these guys. Talk about this Phoenix situation. Obviously, Booker being questionable is a big news point on the slate.
Yeah, really difficult team to break down right now because you have Booker, you have Booker questionable after missing yesterday's game. You had Okogie leave yesterday's game early, which, like you said, could open up some minutes. And then also you have Chris Paul on a back-to-back. I'm not sure if it's by design or not, but he hasn't played a back-to-back yet this year. I think it might just be a coincidence because he was also injured for a while. But that is, something else we'll have to keep an eye on. There's a non-zero chance you get him not playing tonight. But assuming that everybody is in, Chris Paul would still look decent at 8,300. Cameron Payne, I think, is still not expected to play. And when he is out, you get increased playing time. So if Payne is out and Paul is in, you can still project like 34, 35 minutes from Paul. If Payne were to be back, which I don't think he's expected to be, but you go back to like 32 minutes for Paul. So even if Booker is in, Paul looks fine. If Booker is out, Paul certainly looks better at 8,300. If Booker is in at 9,500, he looks pretty good as a probably pretty low owned tournament option. It's not the most favorable price tag, and there have been some really favorably priced guards today, but you know the type of upside you're getting from Booker. DeAndre Ayton looks fine if Booker is in. He's going to look better if Booker is out because you do get a bump in usage for him. He played about 16 first half minutes yesterday. I expect around 32 minutes tonight as long as this game is competitive. Mikal Bridges, another guy that plays a bunch of minutes one way or the other, but he does get a bump in usage if Devin Booker is out. Torrey Craig at 5,600. You're not going to be very confident there, but he's somebody that if Okogie is out, you could certainly see a little bit more run. Damian Lee, if he starts for Booker, is going to look like a decent value at 4,300. So a ton of moving parts here, but one way or the other, as long as he plays, Chris Paul is going to at least look good, if not great. Same for DeAndre Ayton. Booker, Bridges, Craig, all can look like reasonable tournament options.
Yeah, I think just keep an eye on that new situation. If we don't get it before lock, I think that's puts us in a positional opportunity to do a lot of late swapping where the field might not be well prepared for that situation. That's one of the later games on the slate and a ton of moving parts there. So we'll see what ends up happening. And interesting point that you said Chris Paul hasn't played on a back-to-back yet this season. So that could be another news point that could kind of forecast and see if we can take advantage of that situation. It'd be interesting if he were to sit and what those minutes could look like for all those other guys there.
I mean, we should know at least his status well before lock because we'll get an injury report around like 4:30 or whatever.
Yeah. And yeah, no, this total's at 228.5. All the totals are very similar to each other, but the highest total on the slate is this next game. Comes in at 233.5. Memphis taking on Denver. Memphis is 1.5 point favorites. And last game, John Morant got ejected for talking to a fan on the sideline. It was a pretty bogus ejection, but he comes in at 10-4 and 10-7. Morant's, I'm willing to take some chances of Morant as long as Desmond Bane is out, even at this north of 10K price tag, $45 on Yahoo. Seems like one of the solid pay up studs if we have enough value to get there. I like the chances for Morant tonight. Dylan Brooks and Jaren Jackson Jr. I'm willing to go to Jaren Jackson Jr. than Dylan Brooks kind of across the board. I know he's cheaper over there on FanDuel, but both of these guys should play north of 30 minutes. If Jaren Jackson stays out of foul trouble, that is a big if. Steven Adams in this Nikola Jokic matchup, those minutes should be at least in the high 20s, barring any foul trouble. This Memphis team getting some ownership, not as much as the Knicks, but I do like taking some chances with these guys across the board. How do you feel about this Memphis team, specifically John Morant, one of the spend up guys on the slate?
I love Morant here. He's only getting 17% ownership as well. I think that probably is in large part because we don't have a lot of value today. So it's a situation where it's like, oh, well, if I'm going to play Morant, I have to play, Alex Caruso or Patrick Williams or guys like that who you really would rather not. But if I can find ways to get to Morant, I would certainly like to get there. Should be a high scoring game, like you said. He's now played 12 games without Bane and with both Brooks and Jackson. 1.6 DraftKings points per minute, 35.5% usage rate, 43% assist percentage. Should give you 33 or 34 minutes as well. So I think he looks really good. I like the cheap price tag on Steven Adams. Obviously, he's not the most exciting point per minute guy, but 5,100 is just a little cheap for somebody that's likely to play 28 or 29 minutes as long as he avoids foul trouble. He has averaged over a fantasy point per minute in the games that he's played without Bane. So I think he's just a little bit underpriced and he's getting some ownership as a result. Dillon Brooks at 6,300 should play low to mid 30s minutes as well. He's been a fantasy point per minute guy in those games without Bane where Jackson has played. You can never really trust Dillon Brooks, but the upside's there just because he'll shoot a lot. I do think there's a bigger gap in ownership between Brooks and Jackson than there probably should be. On DraftKings, they're only separated by $400 with Jackson at 6,700, but you have Brooks getting 15% ownership to Jackson's 5%. I do think Jackson has overperformed a little bit this season on a point per minute basis. He's averaged 1.34 DraftKings points per minute in the games without Bane. But his true shooting percentage this year so far is much higher than last year. So it is possible that he just improved, but it's also pretty likely that you see him just sort of drop back towards where he has been in the past and go from, 1.35 down to like 1.2 DraftKings points per minute. But if he does avoid foul trouble, give you 28 minutes or so here, he's still a very volatile option because of his block upside that gives you a really high ceiling at very, very little ownership.
Yeah, and I think I feel I feel more confident in this team than I do the Knicks team, just because of the way their ownership comes out and maybe how the minutes might work out against this Denver matchup. So I really like going to this Memphis team across the board. And our sponsor Prize Picks, you should take advantage of some of these John Morant props over here. So our Data and Tools team has Morant projected north of 2 3-pointers made. Right now, the Prize Picks prop line is at 1.5, and we have them at an expected win percentage at 65%. And another Morant prop line that you might want to take some chances on is the Morant rebounds under at 6.5. Right now, that's a prop line over there. We have them projected at just above 6, just at 6.03. So an expected win percentage at 60%. Morant seems like a solid starting point for Prize Picks player cards there. So take advantage of that. And we have some other Prize Picks prop lines that you can take advantage of with our tool. So take advantage of that situation, and shout out to our sponsor Prize Picks. And also you can get that free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum if you do sign up and when you make that first deposit over there. Don't miss out on that offer, as that offer might go away once the calendar year flips around. So yeah, this Memphis team, any interest in the secondary guys? Your Conchar, your Tyus Jones, David Roddy, Aldama, Brandon Clark. It's a 5-game slate. Sometimes a bench player could certainly get some extended run with some foul trouble. Do you want to take some chances here on getting above the field on one of these bench pieces for Memphis?
Brandon Clark's the straight backup to Steven Adams. He would get more minutes if Adams gets in foul trouble. It's a spot where, on average, you're going to get like 20 minutes or so from Brandon Clark, but would certainly get more if Adams is in foul trouble. So I wouldn't play them together, but at 7% ownership and power forward eligibility, I don't mind maybe taking some shots on Clark in tournaments. Same can be said for Santi Aldama. He should be the direct backup to Jaren Jackson. But the difference there is he's not going to play every minute that Jackson's not out there, because you do have Zaire Williams in the rotation now. You have David Roddy out there. So like last game, for example, Jackson played 28.5 minutes. Aldama only played 16 or 17. So it's not quite as appealing. It's not quite as appealing a situation as it is for Clark, because if Jackson gets in foul trouble, it's likely to be a bump for Aldama, but you're likely to also just see more run for some of these other guys. John Conchar at 4,300 should play mid 20s. I think I don't really like getting to Conchar, but I would say that if like Alex Caruso and Patrick Williams are going to pull 24% ownership, John Conchar should be pulling more than 4.
Agreed. Yeah, I definitely think taking some chances on Conchar seems like a way to go here, especially at that ownership difference between guys like Caruso, Pat Williams, we touched on, even Quentin Grimes. So Conchar certainly at that price tag is someone I'll be willing to get above the field on. And hopefully those minutes maybe are the mid 20s. Right now, we have him projected at just under 23 minutes, and maybe high 20s would be the way he pays off that price tag. And that's definitely in his range of outcomes. And I know the chat's talk about refs, and yeah, it's definitely over the weekend. The refs definitely have been in their feelings, and it's been to my disappointment. And I didn't know the Luka toss was that bad. Was he just like just talking and he just got tossed?
Yeah, he didn't even stop to talk. He just jogged by the ref and said something, and the ref tossed him. And so,
God
like
damn.
again, like I don't know what he said. He said, fuck your mom. Then, it's going to happen. But the for whatever it's worth, the broadcast said that same ref had thrown Luka out last year, and that when asked what he said, "Oh hell no, it's a call," and he threw him out. Like if it was something along those lines, just absolutely insane because it's not like Luka stopped and showed him up or anything. He just jogged past him and said something, and he threw him out.
Ah, that's awful. No, that's not fair to us. I mean, that's really dumb. I guess if there's history, maybe it's tough when there's history with these referees. I do think there's a bias put in when there's history with these refs, even though they're paid not to. But especially Luca being such a superstar, he probably doesn't have the longest leash at times. But we'll see. But onto the Denver side we go, and Nikola Jokic coming off one of the best fantasy games ever in the history of DFS. I believe he put up 95 DraftKings points. And I'll take the under on that. I don't think he'll put up 95 DraftKings points tonight, but he's certainly in play 11-8 and 12-5. And it's Nikola Jokic when a guy like him obviously is going to project as probably the highest scoring player on this slate. And he's been balling, man. And I think if you can find a way to get him there, I have no issues. Comes in at just 20% projected ownership right now and 16 over there on FanDuel. I like going to him. I also like going to Jamal Murray at 6,900 and 7K here. I prefer going to Murray than a guy like Brunson. I think Murray, those minutes in the mid 20s, yes. He's obviously playing second fiddle to Nikola Jokic, but Jamal Murray can certainly have a game here. I like that price tag, even at Yahoo at $24. Nikola Jokic and Murray seem like solid tournament options, but there's some ownership going to guys like Bruce Brown as Michael Porter Jr. remains out with a heel injury, and Aaron Gordon comes in at 65 and $6,900 here. And the chat was asking about Bones Highland. Bones Highland's minutes have been super volatile. It's Mike Malone. It kind of just seems like the hot hand when he's going well, he plays him a bunch, and when it's not, he just doesn't play him that much. And he comes in at 5K and $4,900. Seems like a tournament option that I'm willing to take some chances on, just because the minutes could go anywhere from low 20s to high 20s, and that's a big difference for a guy like Highland. KCP continues to play a ton of minutes. You're really hoping he can knock down a bunch of threes at 4,500. I believe he still leads the league in 3-point percentage, which is pretty impressive for him. $5,100 on FanDuel, less appealing there with no 3-point bonus. It's kind of like that's really about it. I don't have much interest in going to guys like Jeff Green, DeAndre Jordan, Christian Braun, and the rest of the guys. But everyone else, I do think are solid tournament options, and I'm willing to get above the field on this team.
Yeah, pretty appealing spot to get to. I'm surprised we're seeing 20% ownership come into Jokic. Like, obviously, I get it because he's Nikola Jokic and he's great. And he's going to be the highest projected player on the slate. But just with the lack of value that we have right now, it seems like that's a lot. But at the same time, we still have him with a 22% chance of being optimal. So that reflects that, even with the shitty value, he's showing up as a very, very good option. Clearly can be somebody that you have to have, especially because, we've talked about this a lot going from the larger slates to smaller ones. You just have less competition for somebody like Jokic. When you talk about these guys around 12K on the large slates, they can be difficult to get to because you just have so many like 8 to 10K guys that are capable of going for 60 plus fantasy points and creating a situation where you don't want that most expensive guy unless they do have that game where they go for 80. But on a 5-game slate, if Jokic just goes for 65, there's a pretty good chance that he's the highest scorer by, 10 points and that you really need to have found a way to get him into your lineup. So certainly want to get to him where I can. Just kind of surprised the ownership was coming in as high as it is right now. But at the same time, it is Jokic. I'm surprised Jamal Murray's not getting more ownership. He is 8% owned. It's because he's listed as questionable, so that's messing up the ownership right now, probably. I do expect you'll see that number come up and probably get more in line with Jalen Brunson. Murray has averaged 1.07 DraftKings points per minute, 32 and a half minutes per game in the games he's played without Porter and with Jokic this year. So if he does go, he's going to look like a pretty good option at 6,900. Aaron Gordon's been playing well. He's 6,500, pulling 14% ownership. That makes sense. Same goes for Bruce Brown at 5,500. He should play a bunch of minutes here. He's always nice because he plays multiple positions, so it's easy for him to get out there. As far as the Bones Highland piece, if he's going to be low, if he's going to be like 8% owned on a slate like this where there's so much questionable value, I do like taking shots on him at 5K just because you talk about people are going to play Alex Caruso, Patrick Williams, guys like that they're a little bit less expensive, but they're projecting for 28, 30 minutes. They're just not very good fantasy point per minute guys. If Bones Highland comes out and plays well off the bench, we know he can get 26, 27 minutes if he's playing well, and that's going to just most likely give you a score that you really need in tournaments. So he's another guy that's sort of similar to what I was saying with Jaden Ivey, where for slightly different reasons, but where I really like playing him when he's not popular, and I don't really like playing him when he is popular.
Yeah, and I think this team certainly has a lot of tournament appeal, especially like you said, the reasons for playing Bones Highland there. And yeah, the center position. I mean, just reviewing the Jokic situation because he's such transcendent play, usually more nights than not. I mean, the other center plays that are near him, it's a big difference. There's Porzingis, Bam, and DeAndre Ayton and Vooch. And there's a huge just raw point projection difference. I think more often than not, Jokic should be projected more 13, 14, 15 points higher than Porzingis and Bam, if not higher. And in this spot, that makes sense. Maybe the ownership is coming in like that, and we'll see what will end up coming in. I do think that ownership might drop because if we don't get any like super sub 4K value, it might be tough to get in Jokic, and we might be forced into balance build instead of a stars and scrubs build.
Yeah, like it just kind of, obviously Jokic is great. It's just like with the value we have right now, if we just assumed that everything holds, and it's not going to because it's the NBA, but if you just assumed everything held, it would be kind of interesting to say like, all right, well, what if I play Steven Adams and Mitchell Robinson at center so that I can get up to Ja Morant and, Ja Morant at guard, play, Brunson or Murray at guard, and avoid the like Alex Caruso, Patrick Williams types, hope that Jokic goes for 60, Caruso and Williams go for 20. If Morant also goes for like 60, you're in a great spot there. So like there's ways it can work. It's just, obviously also if Jokic does what he's been doing recently, and he's been playing out of his mind in these games without Michael Porter Jr., averaging 1.9 DraftKings points per minute in these 12 games. If he continues doing that, you're dead without him is the risk.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And it's a tough situation with what value we have right now. And I mean, a lot of value can certainly open up. We touched on teams on a back-to-back and teams that are questionable, but right now it doesn't seem that easy to jam him in there. We're going to be sacrificing some nice balance builds potentially. We'll see though. But no, there's a fun 5-game slate for this Tuesday. For everyone who's watching, hit that like button. And this is it. Any final thoughts on the slate, Adam? Anything to pay attention to besides news?
No, just waiting on news. I'll have my tournament plays videos out once we get some news. I'll have the injury report video out around 1:30, and then be back for the deeper dive with Lofty.
Awesome. Yeah, stay tuned for the deeper dive and live before lock. Hit that like button and leave that 5-star review for us on any podcast platform you guys are listening to us. Have a great Tuesday and good luck.